Making headlines tonight. Another GSP saga. The United States Congress leaves the GSP concession program unextended. Will it deal a blow to Sri Lanka?
What is important is GSP plus, not GSP.
Also making headlines, splendid relations. President Maithripala Sirisena says that his approach to relations with other nations led to amicable accords. Consumer prices. Sri Lanka ends year with an inflation of 7.1%. Governor of the central bank is however hopeful of reaching mid-single-digit range during the first quarter of next year.
However, the Monetary Board is watching a couple of things very carefully. But at the moment, we feel we are broadly in the right place. A number of things are trending in the right direction.
Getting tough. US President Donald Trump says that he had been soft on China. Make up your own mind. Roshan Mahanama reveals that members of the ICC's anti-corruption unit paid several visits to Sri Lanka recently and urges to decipher the reason behind it. Good evening, bringing you news from across Sri Lanka and around the world on Other Derana 24/7, first at 9. I'm Indivari Amwatha. We begin tonight's news with your developments on the business segment. The United States Generalized System of Preferences program, known as GSP, is set to expire this Sunday, the 31st of December, a benefit that Sri Lanka enjoys. The US is Sri Lanka's biggest export market, with $2.8 billion of goods exported to the US last year. With the United States Embassy in Sri Lanka issuing a communique confirming that the United States Congress did not review GSP this year, Deputy Minister of National Policies and Economic Affairs, Dr. Harsha De Silva, brushed off speculation on the overall impact. He stressed that Sri Lanka must be concerned on the GSP Plus facility of the European Union rather than the GSP facility of the United States.
The Generalized System of Preferences program of the United States was authorized by the Trade Act of 1974 to promote economic growth in developing countries and was implemented on the 1st of January 1976. So far, 120 countries and territories, including Sri Lanka, are beneficiaries of the program. According to the Export Development Board, the US is the top export market for Sri Lanka, accounting for 27% of Sri Lanka's total exports. Apparel topped the list with $2.1 billion worth of exports to the US, followed by rubber products, totaling at $237.6 million. Fish and agricultural products are also prominent exports. Sri Lanka is also the 11th largest GSP exporter to the US, exporting goods worth $173 million under the program. The GSP, however, periodically expires and must be renewed by the US Congress to remain in effect. The GSP was last renewed in 2015 and will expire on the 31st of December this year, with the US Congress yet to reauthorize it for the upcoming year. The immediate effect of GSP expiration is that GSP-eligible imports to the United States from Sri Lanka and other GSP beneficiary countries and territories will be subject to non-preferential duties from the 1st of January in 2018. Speaking to media, however, Deputy Minister of National Policies and Economic Affairs, Dr. Harsha De Silva, had this to say.
Actually, a lot of people are confused between GSP and GSP plus. GSP trade concession is given to 120 countries across the world, which means the removal of this trade concession applies to 120 countries. So it is nothing special to Sri Lanka because the entire structure of cost into the US will go up by about 3 to 3.5%. This is not going to have any significant impact on our exports into the US. What is important is that we are able to continue to benefit from GSP plus, not GSP.
Speaking to First at 9, Chief Economist of the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce, Sharan Fernando, assured that the impact on Sri Lanka will be minimal.
This occurrence has taken place in the past as well. In 2013, when it expired as well, it was renewed till 2015. So it will take, I think, a bit of time for Congress to pass the bill through and get the scheme renewed again. But what we've even seen with delayed renewals is that the period in which the scheme was not eligible for export, there has been a refund given, which enables the exporters of Sri Lanka to enjoy those benefits even in the periods where they did not enjoy it. If this trend does continue, we don't expect too much of impact in terms of the exports from Sri Lanka. But also, if you look at how much of exports go through the scheme, it's about 6 to 7%. If you look at the 2016 numbers, the overall impact is quite less. We're not losing out too much, but maybe in the interim we could have a bit of shortfall from products which go through this scheme.
Despite the Office of the U.S. Trade Representative listing textile exports under GSP, Secretary General of the Joint Apparel Association Forum, Tuli Kure, told First at 9 that there will be no impact on the apparel sector.
The textile and apparel products that are being exported by Sri Lanka to the United States of America are not eligible for GSP preferences. Therefore, we have not been enjoying any of those preferences, and therefore, right now, the non-revision of the GSP, it is not a concrete decision. We believe that it will come in anyway within the next 2 weeks. Therefore, there will be no negative impact on the textile and apparel industry exports.
Sri Lanka ended the year posting an inflation of 7.1% year-on-year during this month. The Department of Census and Statistics shows that the Colombo Consumer Price Index grew 0.6% to 122.9 points during December. The moving average inflation rate for the month was 6.6% and the corresponding rate for November was 6.4%. Meanwhile, Central Bank Governor Indrajit Kumaraswamy told journalists yesterday that at the Monetary Policy Review media briefing that inflation is expected to reach mid-single-digit range during the first quarter of next year. He added that the economy is on a stabilizing path and gaining investor confidence, although persistent economic reforms are required to stimulate lagging growth.
By the end of the year, we will see inflation trending down, and it has begun to do that, and we think that by the end of the first quarter, we will be within our target range of 4 to 6%. However, the Monetary Board is watching a couple of things very carefully. One is wage developments, because when you have a few months of high headline inflation, it can lead to wage pressure. And the other thing is inflation expectations. Sri Lanka has historically been a high inflation economy. The way we can transition to a low inflation economy is if we anchor inflation expectations. And to do that, the monetary policy formulation of the central bank must have credibility. But at the moment, we feel we are broadly in the right place. A number of things are trending in the right direction, and there seems to be increasing confidence in the Sri Lankan economy around the world. So taken together, we are in a reasonably good place at the end of this year. And the rupee, at the beginning of the year, people kept asking me when it was going to get to 160, etc. We are going to end the year. At the moment, it's depreciated by just 1.9%, and it is at about 152.60, I think, at the moment. Clearly, that again is a reflection of the fact that the confidence in the economy and the currency.
However, the governor of the central bank, Indrajit Kumaraswamy, pointed out that there are a number of negatives confronting the Sri Lankan economy, with the growth being the most concerning. The economy grew at 3.3% during the third quarter of this year, and Dr. Kumaraswamy pointed out that the economy will reach a less than anticipated year-end growth.
This year, we are going to end up at best 4%. It's going to be a little less than 4%, if one is, which is less than we expected. Clearly, the weather has had a major impact. Though agriculture is only 7% of GDP, the food processing sector within the industrial sector accounts for about, I think, 20% of the industrial sector. So if you take agriculture and agro-based industries together, that's close to about 20% of GDP. So when that gets affected in the way it has been, clearly that does have to have an impact on growth. We need to get growth up, but you don't get growth up by artificially stimulating it, by introducing inappropriate macroeconomic policies. You have to get growth up through economic reform. So the economic reforms that have been initiated need to be persisted with, and they will then bear fruition in due course.
Meanwhile, issuing the external sector performance for October, central banks said the trade deficit contracted to $752 million in October, compared to $868 million in the same month of last year. Maintaining a growth momentum, earnings from exports increased further, registering a double-digit growth during the month, mainly due to higher earnings from industrial exports, reflecting the increase in garment exports to the USA and the European Union markets. Central banks said garment exports to the United States increased by 14.7%, while those to the EU increased 8%, with the benefit of GSP Plus facility taking effect. Meanwhile, the expenditure on imports decelerated in October this year, mainly due to the decline in expenditure on sugar imports owing to lower volumes. The cumulative trade deficit, however, expanded to $7.6 billion during the first 10 months of this year, compared to $6.9 billion in the corresponding month or the period of 2016. And the Colombo Stock Exchange wrapped up 2017 on a positive note despite a recent losing streak. The SPI closed with a gain of 2.3% in 2017, while the S&P SL20 index improved by 5%. Daily average turnover advanced to $915 million during the year, compared to 743 million rupees in the past year. Foreign investors, meanwhile, wrapped up the year as net buyers of 18.5 billion rupees worth of shares. Today, ending the trading session for 2017, shares rose for a sixth straight session in muted trade. For a detailed picture of how the markets performed during the week, here's Upul Athapattu from NDB Securities with your weekly market review.
During the last week of the year, ASPI gained 0.7%, mainly due to price gains in counters such as John Case Holdings, Sri Lanka Telecom, and Chevron Lubricants. Meanwhile, S&P SL20 increased by 0.6% for the week. ASPI recorded an annual gain of 2.3%, whilst S&P SL20 recorded an annual gain of 5% for 2017. The average daily turnover was down from last week to 255 million rupees. This marked the lowest average weekly turnover for the year. Banks, finance and insurance sector recorded the highest sector turnover during the week, while the second highest was seen in the manufacturing sector. The weekly foreign purchases accounted for 37% of the total weekly turnover. A net foreign inflow of 107 million rupees was recorded, which increased the total net foreign inflow in 2017 to 17.7 billion rupees. Out of the weekly turnover, block trades accounted for 32%, which was lower than last week.
Sri Lanka's award-winning news channel, Derana 24/7.
In other top local news tonight, President Maithripala Sirisena says his approach and relationship with other nations ensured that Sri Lanka was benefited. He made these remarks at a gathering of the SLFP and UPFA candidates facing the looming local government election held in Colombo today.
A gathering of local government election candidates of the United People's Freedom Alliance, led by the Sri Lanka Freedom Party, was held at the Sugatadasa Indoor Stadium today. The gathering was chaired by President Maithripala Sirisena. During the event, the candidates pledged to follow clean and public-friendly conduct in politics.
We only have one thing with us to reach out to the public, and that is our dedication for clean politics. Then our victory is confirmed. If there is a political party that treats all races equally, I proudly say that it is none other than the SLFP with the UPFA. President Maithripala Sirisena has a duty to chase away all the rogues in the government. The upcoming election is the first opportunity that we get to strengthen the president to expel all these rogues within the government. Some question me as to what I did within 3 years. As you all are aware, Russia imposed a ban on Sri Lankan tea imports. Our political opponents claimed that this incident showcases our foreign policies. I wrote a letter to the Russian President Vladimir Putin, and then he decided to lift the ban. Currently, there is an issue regarding fertilizer in our country. I contacted the Premier of Pakistan via telephone last week and asked for help. Few minutes ago, I received a message from the Pakistan Premier saying that he has asked to send 40,000 metric tons of fertilizer to Sri Lanka. When I returned to Sri Lanka from Qatar after discussions with heads of state, a minister representing Qatar's emir, along with investors, came to Sri Lanka for our country's development. They handed over a letter from the Qatari emir stating that Qatar will take charge of an entire city in Sri Lanka and develop it. They asked us to recommend a suitable place for the venture.
Various politicians, meanwhile, were not shy in expressing their views on the looming local government election, as well as the machinations of party politics.
We have clearly rallied as the anti-government bloc. There is a clear division, and I think it will increase in the near future. Those who change parties do that when they ask something from the leaders and don't get it. That is unstoppable. They will remain against the government for the most part. The people are under pressure. How much is a coconut now? There are many burning issues. The cost of living has increased. They try to divide the country. We united. And the issue of narcotics is increasing daily. They say they seize stocks of narcotics, but no one knows what happens to them. We don't know if the stocks go back to the market. This is a dangerous situation. What we are doing is sponsoring the flower bud under the title of joint opposition. If steps are taken against us and if we are thrown out of the party, it is against the basic rules of justice. The entire economic sector is ruled by the United National Party. The Prime Minister, Malik Samaravikrama, the Minister of Finance and Kabir Hashim all control the economic sector. They take the decisions. We have to accept that the decisions have turned unsuccessful. Wherever we go, people tend to speak against the government. There is no use of hiding these facts. They say the cost of living is high and it is difficult to live. They ask what has happened and why this government is still in power. We're in this government not because we like it, but purely because this country needs a government. They import rice and coconuts while exporting airports and ports. Therefore, vote to make Mahinda Rajapaksa the president again. The joint opposition is already gone. They have left the flower bud in their hearts. Buds usually bloom in the morning and wither by night. The same will happen on the 11th. The only path for them to win is to criticize others by making false accusations and taking legal action against us. People won't be surprised if Nama Rajapaksa is arrested again. The only thing this government knows is how to suppress and take revenge. They remanded an old woman who stole a mango and asked for a huge fine. But no action was taken against Gotabaya Rajapaksa, who used public funds to build a memorial for his parents. The court decided not to arrest him. If the Rajapaksas face allegations, why haven't they been arrested? Although this government has been in power for nearly 3 years, we tell the Good Governance government that although they have been chasing thieves, ultimately they have turned out to be thieves themselves. What happened? People planned to catch thieves, but the Prime Minister protected them. Therefore, if anyone voted for this government to eradicate theft, it has not been achieved.
The Minister of Special Assignment, Dr. Sarath Amanugama, identifies a country's failure to utilize its resources to gather a high level of information and intelligence as unpardonable. The minister was speaking at this year's International Statistics Conference themed Statistics for Good Governance in Colombo yesterday.
And I hope, and if they are serious about the development effort, they must be open to all types of scientific information. I don't want to go into details because there are too many of the mistakes that we have made by not analyzing the situation on the ground based on statistical data and not taking the proper decisions. Today, that is unpardonable. It's a criminal thing if a country does not make use of those resources that are available to it to get a high level of information and intelligence which is necessary to make decisions, particularly in the crucial sectors today which are managed by state enterprise. So I cannot admire too much the need for scientific information and the need for the use of new technology. And more relevant information will always be out in front. But basically, we need predictability in the development effort in governance. Over the last few years, there has been a big debate about how do you really statistically capture GDP and GDP growth. The definitions have changed. And that is why suddenly Sri Lanka, which was saying we are having GDP growth of 8%, 9%, suddenly says, you say we have 4% or 3%. Part of it may be due to lack of growth, maybe, I don't know. But it's also partly due to the fact that the statistical frame has been changed. Change this and then IMF suddenly says your growth figures are different. So these are some very vital issues in the economy.
The Department of Archaeology decided to take over the area of Sudaikudu in Sampur, where the recently destroyed historic stupa was located. When inquired from the Department of Archaeology whether the destruction could have been averted, its acting Director General said that the procedure from the point of discovery to take over of the site cannot be accomplished overnight.
On the 11th of November, a team of archaeologists discovered the ruins of an ancient stupa dating back to the Anuradhapura era in the area of Sudaikuda in Sampur. Days after the discovery, however, the historic site was bulldozed. Following the incident, Deputy Incumbent of the Bellanvilla Rajamahavihara Temple, Venerable Professor Bellanvilla Vimala Ratanathera, brought the matter under the spotlight, with Speaker of Parliament Karu Jayasuriya weighing in, saying that the individuals behind the destruction of the historic stupa have been identified. In this backdrop, the Department of Archaeology decided to take over the site where the historical stupa was discovered and was soon destroyed.
Taking over and place under the department is a matter of transferring it from the government. So anyway, the monument belongs to the Department of Archaeology. It's just only early stage of identification. When they go there and when they are doing a large-scale survey in Trincomalee district. So this is one of the monuments that they have found during their investigation. The normal procedure is that we have been finding these types of mounds everywhere in the country. So there are certain procedures. If you find today, you can't take it over tomorrow. There are about 250,000 monuments, archaeological remains in this country. We don't have 250,000 guards to put in this area.
Meanwhile, Sampur police discovered the bulldozer used to destroy the ancient stupa. Reportedly, the driver of the bulldozer in question is critically injured after being involved in an accident which occurred on the 26th of this month, leaving him under treatment at the National Hospital. The owner of the bulldozer, the driver of the lorry that transported the bulldozer, as well as a broker involved in the incident, was arrested by the police last week. However, according to the police media spokesperson's office, all three individuals are currently out on bail.
You are watching Sri Lanka's award-winning news channel, Other Derana 24/7.
US President Donald Trump said yesterday that he had been soft on China on trade issues and he was not happy that China had allowed oil shipments to go into North Korea. Trump made the remarks during an interview with the New York Times in the backdrop of a report by South Korean media that Chinese tankers had been secretly transferring oil at sea to North Korean vessels. The United Nations recently approved sanctions to cut North Korea's petrol imports by 90%.
Quoting South Korean government officials, a South Korean newspaper said the illegal ship-to-ship transfers had been filmed by US spy satellites about 30 times since October. Taking to Twitter, US President Donald Trump commented that China had been caught red-handed, adding that there could never be a friendly solution to the North Korea crisis if oil was allowed to be exported to Pyongyang. Speaking to the New York Times, Trump explicitly tied his administration's trade policy with China to the country's perceived cooperation in resolving the North Korea nuclear crisis. He said, quote, "I can be different if they are helping us with North Korea. If they don't help us with North Korea, then I do what I've always said I want to do. unquote. China, North Korea's main trading partner, denies the South Korean report and affirms that it fully enforces all UN resolutions against Pyongyang. Meanwhile, the US president also took to Twitter to express himself on the country's winter. Trump yesterday tweeted that the eastern United States, which has been hit with freezing temperatures, could use some good old global warming. Trump wrote on Twitter, "In the East, it could be the coldest New Year's Eve on record. Perhaps we could use a little bit of that good old global warming that our country, but not other countries, was going to pay trillions of dollars to protect against. Bundle up."
Former football star George Weah has won Liberia's presidential election and will succeed incumbent Ellen Johnson Sirleaf next month, the country's first democratic transition in over 70 years. Turnout was low at 56%, but election observers have praised the conduct of the poll.
The failure of any candidate to secure an outright majority in the first round forced a runoff held on Tuesday. With nearly all ballots counted, George Weah was well ahead of opponent Joseph Boakai with more than 60% of the votes. As news of Weah's victory emerged, his supporters began celebrating in the capital, Monrovia. Weah started at top-flight European football clubs Paris Saint-Germain and AC Milan before ending his career in England with brief stays at Chelsea and Manchester City. He is the only African footballer to have won both FIFA World Player of the Year and the prestigious Ballon d'Or.
You are watching Sri Lanka's premier news channel, Derana 24/7.
And in sports, veteran cricketer Roshan Mahanama says that Sri Lanka has been visited by the ICC's anti-corruption unit several times within the recent past, leaving questions over the reason behind the visits. He made this revelation at a special program held on school cricket at the BMICH today.
A special program on the development of school cricket was held under the patronage of Minister of Education Akila Viraj Karyavasam at the BMICH today. Many coaches and principals of schools joined the program, while former cricketing greats Mahela Jayawardena, Siddharth Vettamuni and Roshan Mahanama were also among the dignitaries.
I don't think that school cricket is the reason behind the current situation of Sri Lanka cricket. There are more reasons behind it and we should find solutions. This happened because we did not implement our plans properly. I don't agree with 3 members from the Sri Lanka Cricket Association participating for the Under-19 World Cup. My personal opinion is that it would be better if a coach or an additional player tours. During the last 3 to 6 months, I worked as a referee for the ICC. Within the last 3 to 6 months, members from the ICC Anti-Corruption Unit paid several visits to Sri Lanka. It is up to you to think as to why they visited Sri Lanka if they did not have a problem.
You are watching Sri Lanka's #1 news channel, Derana 24/7.
Good evening and welcome to the Weather Centre. Now, it's largely good news for those who are looking to get out and about before the dawn of the new year, as tomorrow is said to be a relatively mild day across the country. The western regions as well as some parts of the south, especially Hambantota, will have temperatures of 28 or 29 degrees Celsius. But other than that, tomorrow doesn't look like being a scorcher. That said, however, those who are in the central province may want to brace themselves as it is likely to be a bit chilly. Showers-wise, some are likely to the southwest of Kandy, especially in the Sabaraguma province, but the rest of the country will stay dry. Up next is your city by city forecast. Enjoy your last weekend before the new year.
It's Friday, so as usual, let's end the working week on a high note with our good story of the week. Tonight's story comes to us from China, where a man braved frozen water to rescue a 70-year-old woman who had fallen into an icy river recently. Finding an elderly woman falling into the river on his way to work, 54-year-old Shilei rushed to the riverbank without hesitation and tried hard to break the ice barehanded. The woman was frozen, stiff, and had no strength to climb onto the river bank. Lay jumped into the frigid water and carried the woman back to the bank, where neighbors stepped out to take care of her. And that wraps up tonight's broadcast. When you have the time, do log on to facebook.com/first@9 or follow us on Twitter at twitter.com/first@9. Enjoy the weekend. Good night.